Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary of Fort Worth 148.
This is Billy Hamilton, junior warden of 148.
This is Gabriel Jagush, senior deacon of Fort Worth 148, and we have a special guest today.
This is Jim Rumsey, member of the Committee on Work of the Grand Lodge of Texas.
Glad to have you, Jim.
Jim,
Glad to be here.
Pleasure to have you here.
This is kind of a thing we've had at the back of our mind of doing for a long time, so we're glad you volunteered for this.
So we wanted to start off and jump straight into the meat of the discussion and not waste any time.
First question I've got is, what is the Committee on Work?
The Committee on Work is one of, I think, 21 permanent committees of the Grand Lodge. And it's composed of 5 members who are elected at large at the Grand Lodge session each year. And the charge of the committee is to preserve and harmonize the Texas ritual. And by Texas ritual, it's the opening and closing of all 4 of our lodges and the degree work for the 3 degrees. Also to grade lodges and issue certificates of merit, and to teach lodges in the ritual and the lectures, and to examine individuals in the rituals and lectures for esoteric teaching certificates.
Sweet. Yeah, I think you just knocked out like half of my questions right up front.
That's just how I roll.
There you go. There you go. So you kind of went over how many members and what the Committee on Work does there. So who are our current Committee on Work members?
So the committee is composed of five people. There's a chairman, which is Dwayne Anthony out of Orange, Texas. The secretary is Chuck Forsyth from Odessa, Texas. And then there are 3 general members. In addition to myself, we have Keith Reynolds in San Antonio and Cliff Jones in Hereford.
Gotcha. So how long do you guys serve once you're elected?
Once you're elected, it's a 5-year term.
Mm. So there's no backing out.
No term, and no term limits. So Worshipful Jimmy Henley held the job for over 20 years.
Wait, no term limits. So like you have to step down?
Or not run again for re-election.
Oh, I gotcha. I follow you. I gotcha.
Do you usually get, like if you run again, do you usually get reelected, or do people challenge sometimes?
There have been challenges in the past that have been successful.
Huh.
But it's not what you would say is a common thing?
Not really. I've seen it once in the 15 years I've been a Mason.
Gotcha. So you're elected, and I mean, that reasons would be that would take place at Grand Lodge, right?
Correct.
So how does that process work? How do you make yourself available for that?
So the process for making yourself available for a vacancy on the Committee on Work is just like making yourself available for any elected office in the Grand Lodge line. You've got to file a statement of availability by the cutoff or the deadline with the Grand Secretary's office. And you've got to adhere to the no politicking rules of the Grand Lodge, and politic without politicking.
Yeah. So if it was explained to me right, you guys have quadrants, right? You're broke up into areas.
So the state, for the committeemen, the state is divided into regions. So each committeeman has a region of the state. This region that we're in stretches from Clay County, which is just east of Wichita Falls, goes down south, picks up Wise County, Tarrant County, Parker County, Hood County, kind of angles toward the east a little bit, picks up Johnson County, goes all the way down through Hill County, McLennan County, which is Waco. It picks up Killeen and Belton. And then from Belton, Bell County, it angles up to the northeast and goes through Limestone and Freestone counties to Fairfield and to Palestine, and then up into Tyler and then Longview, then over to Marshall to the Louisiana state line, then straight up all the way up to Texarkana, then all the way back across along the Red River. So this region's got 49 Masonic districts, 290 lodges, and about 38% of the Master Masons in Texas in it.
Wow. Yeah, and there's 5. So if you're going to make yourself available, you can't live in Houston and run for a position for West Texas.
You can. There's nothing that prohibits it, but you'd be responsible for that West Texas region, regardless of where you live.
You'd be a lot of miles.
Possibly a bad idea.
Just to give you guys a quick reference to how this region compares to the other 4. I've got 49 Masonic districts in this region. Dwayne Anthony, who's got the Southeast Texas, Houston Bay Area, he's got 32 districts. Chuck Forsyth, who's got the West Texas region, has got 25 districts. Keith Reynolds, who's got the San Antonio, Austin, and South Central Texas, has got 26 districts. And Cliff Jones, got the Texas Panhandle, he has 10 districts.
Oh, wow. Man. You drew the short straw.
Yeah.
So how much traveling do you have to do within the normal scope of your work as a member on the Committee on Work?
So the normal scope is just traveling to and from the ritual forums, the certificate examinations, and if I get invited to a lodge to grade or score a degree for a certificate of merit. And then other things that pop up. For instance, this past Tuesday, Grandmaster Chapman appointed me a personal representative of his to go up to Bowie County and open up a representation of the Grand Lodge for a district deputy Grandmaster's funeral. So some things like that. But traditionally, it's just the ritual forum, certificate exams, and then assisting anybody in the districts that need help.
Gotcha. So when was the Committee on Work formed?
So in its current version, it was formed in 1855. And I say current version because there's a committee entitled the Committee on Work and Lectures that first appears in the Grand Lodge proceedings in 1841. But there's no charge given for what that committee was supposed to do, and that committee never made a report to the Grand Lodge in the subsequent years. It's mentioned again idly in the 1844 proceedings, but again, no charge given and no report made. Then in 1855, the Grand Lodge approved a 5-member committee titled the Committee on Work. All 5 members were elected, and their charge then was different than it is today. Their charge was actually to develop a Texas ritual, a unique Texas ritual. It took those guys 3 years, and 11 guys came and went from the committee during that 3 years. So in 1858, that committee exemplified the ritual at Grand Lodge, and the Grand Lodge members approved the Texas ritual for the first time in 1858. When that ritual was adopted, the charge of the committee changed from the development of the ritual to the preservation of the ritual. But they weren't allowed to teach the ritual until about the 1880s or 1890s.
Wait,
so
they were in charge of preserving it, but not teaching it?
How does that work?
We had a grand lecturer and district lecturers whose charge it was to teach the ritual. So the committee was in charge with preserving it and harmonizing it and making recommended subtle changes to it over time. But they weren't allowed to teach it. Now they were required at Grand Lodge each year to hold certificate examinations. And back then it was a lot different than it is now. If your lodge wanted to have a vote at Grand Lodge, you had to send someone to the forum or the examination by the Committee on Work.
Oh, wait. Now that's something.
Part of me feels
about.
like we should bring that back.
And they did it at Grand Lodge. So the Grand Lodge session would last for a full week, and a delegate from each lodge had to attend the Committee on Work session.
That's brilliant, actually.
So, would they just have to attend, or would they have to qualify in some way?
I don't know the answer to that, Billy.
So,
Okay.
do you know why we ended up shifting away from Committee on Work Preserving and suggesting changes and Grand Lecturers teaching to Committee on Work Preserving and teaching? Do you know what
I do, Gabe, and this is a very long answer, so this may be a topic for another talk. But the Grand Lecturer system proved to be grossly ineffective because he only had 1 to 3 lecturers for the entire state whose charge it was to teach the ritual. In the 1890s, that shifted, and the teaching fell under the purview of the Committee on Work. And then in the early 1900s, we see the development of what we now know as the district instructor system, which proved to be more effective.
Yeah, I mean, in 1890, 3 people trying to cover the state, that's not going to happen. You couldn't do that in a year.
So in the we're getting off topic a little bit, but in the 1880s, the deputy Grand Master went to El Paso Lodge number 130, and he came back, and in his report to the Grand Lodge, he said he was welcomed with open arms, very professional and fraternal. He was treated with the utmost respect. He witnessed a master's degree. The execution was brilliant and perfect. The lecturers were harmonized, but he didn't recognize any of it.
Really?
And the folks in El Paso were using the work of the Grand Lodge of California. No one had told them that 40 years earlier, 30 years earlier, we adopted Texas work.
Oh, no, really?
And then going back and looking at the reports of both the district deputy Grand Masters and the Grand Lecturers every year, they all said, and El Paso Lodge being so far removed, it was not expected that I visit. So no one ever visited officially El Paso Lodge from the Grand Lodge.
Oh, those poor guys. Wow. So I was actually about to ask you, I was going to save it for the ritual portion, but you kind of partially answered it there. So Texas didn't have one cohesive ritual because the Committee on Work had to develop unique Texas ritual. So would you see then different ritual from lodge to lodge?
Well, here's what happened. So the Grand Lodge started in 1837, had their first meeting in 1838. In 1838, the Grand Lodge, for reasons that we can only speculate, adopted the work of the Grand Lodge of Tennessee. So from 1838 through early 1850s, we were using Tennessee work. I can speculate that most Masons in Texas had never sat in a lodge in Tennessee and had no idea what Tennessee work was actually like. So I can only imagine the disharmony with the ritual in different parts of the state. But in the 1840s, late 1840s, there was a push from the Northeast to form a United Grand Lodge of the United States of America.
Is this the Baltimore Conference?
Texas voted against. Yes. Texas voted against it, and as did most of the Grand Lodges. But that set in motion an ideal that was proposed in 1852 by Grandmaster Sales that Texas needs to be unique so we don't get caught in something like this again. So in 1855, that first committee was formed to develop a unique Texas ritual.
Oh.
Now, the other side of that is that past Grandmaster William Martin Taylor was the first chairman of the committee, and he's known today as the father of our ritual. He took his ritual predominantly from the work of Thomas Smith Webb, who published the Webb Monitor in 1797 in New England.
So since that time that we kind of established our style, Texas style, have there been any major changes since then?
A whole lot, actually.
Gotcha.
That's one of the biggest misconceptions I think guys have is that our ritual's been steadfast and unchanged since its inception. It's really one of constant evolution.
Yeah.
So the biggest part was in the 1870s and 1880s, after the Civil War and after Reconstruction wound down. There was a big push to de-Christianize the ritual. So our ritual, as first published or first adopted in 1858, was based off of Smith's or Webb's work, which was heavily Christian. The Grand Lodge of England, where Webb got his work from Preston, they went through a de-Christianization in 1813. Well, in 1813, we're right smack dab in the middle of the War of 1812. We could really give a flying crap what the British are doing.
Yeah.
So we didn't change our rituals, but fast forward 60 years, and then it caught up with us. And our ritual went through a significant change in the 1870s and 1880s. And it's been constant since then. What we now know as the second and third sections of the Entered Apprentice Catechism weren't added until 1924. And up through 1934, all the degrees had music accompanying them. And then the catechism was changed most recently as 1969.
So they had music, but they took it out, or it just fell out of fad?
They took it out. If you ever come across an old Taylor monitor or a Taylor Hamilton monitor, the music is in the monitor.
I've got one. I'll have to check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
With the publication of the Lightfoot Manual in 1934, the music was no longer included.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Now I had a question about the second and third sections of the Entered Apprentice Catechism. I had been told, and I do not know the veracity of this, but it sounds very plausible, that the second and third section were added to the Entered Apprentice Catechism because there was an effort among the clan to join Masonry and infiltrate it, and this was an effort to keep the clansmen out. However, I don't know if that's true or not, and I wanted to ask you, what do you know about this?
So what I obviously wasn't there in 1924, but what I've researched and what I've found is that there was such an influx of men joining after World War I that the Grand Lodge made the requirements a little bit stiffer to get in to deal with that mass influx of men trying to join.
Okay, so just people in general. Okay.
Yeah.
Not specifically clansmen. Okay, because I'd heard that, I just wasn't sure. I was like, it sounds like a little too idealistic for Texas, which is kind of sad. How do we know what these changes in the ritual are? Now, when we say, all like the de-Christianization of the ritual, right? Is that something that we know because somebody wrote down a ritual cipher, or because we had plain text, or is this something that's been handed down from mouth to ear that, hey, back in the 1800s?
So all changes to the ritual, particularly changes of the words, require a resolution and a vote at Grand Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
So every change to the ritual is recorded in the proceedings and the minutes of the Grand Lodge. Now, the recordings are very careful not to reveal the esoteric, but the intent of the changes are printed and published.
Oh, okay.
So we could go back and just scour Grand Lodge minutes and find all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there's two ways it can be amended. One is by resolution, and the other one is each year when the Committee on Work makes their report, they may recommend changes in the report, and when the voting members approve the report, they approve those changes.
Those reports, they're sneaky, man. You got to listen to those. That's usually when everybody hops up and goes to the restroom, and those are important.
Yeah, they are. And you can go back and read the previous committee reports published in the proceedings and see some of that in there as well.
Okay. So last question I've got here before I pass the baton is, what's the biggest misconception about the Committee on Work, if there is one?
That we all agree on the work.
Well, and I think something that I always had the misconception of is that you guys had the authority to change the work, which I found out it's not true.
That is not true, but there's a caveat to that, Rhit. So the committee has the authority to harmonize the work. So if there is some floor movement or body movement or position during a degree, the committee has the authority to make subtle changes to harmonize the flow of the degree.
Mm-hmm.
But any significant changes to the theme of the movements or the theme of the work or the words have to be approved by Grand Lodge.
Yeah, see, I asked if, and you probably know where I'm coming from this, I asked if you could put a comma or take a comma out, and nope, we can't do that. So yeah, the movement that makes sense because that doesn't change really the effect of the degree.
Right. The ritual, as far as what's preserved, is the words. The movements, we've got some latitude to adjust some of that, just to harmonize and streamline some. And I'll give you an example, something that came up recently. There's a part in all of our degrees that it's never been standardized. There's never been a direct procedure on how this guy gets from point A to point B. Well, enough people asked the question and asked for direction that the committee decided to standardize that procedure on how this guy gets from his podium to the altar.
Gotcha.
Little things like that, the committee can standardize, but they can't change it.
So, like, if you guys get a question like that you all are shrugging your shoulders, like I haven't ever heard of anything, do y'all go back to the mossbacks like Jimmy Henley and things like that and say, have you ever heard of anything like this?
So I can't speak for the committee as a whole, but whenever we have our meetings, we talk about a lot of stuff, and everybody comes to these meetings with questions they've been asked that they couldn't readily answer. And the answer is yes. Those former committeemen are a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
They may not know how something is, but they know why something is, or how it got to this way. So yeah, absolutely.
Now, there's a question I had about commas. There was, and obviously we can't get too detailed into the actual wording of this, but anybody who has heard the Entered Apprentice Catechism knows that there is some debate among some individuals about whether or not the answer to the second question is composed of 2 clauses or 3 clauses, and where the heck the comma is.
I'm going to give you an official answer right now. You ready?
Yes, and I know what I actually know what the official answer is, but I wanted to ask
you
on.
I'm fixing to give you an answer that's official that you've not heard before.
Oh, really? Is it official because you gave it?
The Committee on Work has jurisdiction over the words. The committee, nor any member thereof, has jurisdiction on how you pause in your delivery.
Get out of here. Interesting.
I think it's a moot argument anyways. It means the same thing both ways.
Both.
But with the publication of the cipher book, I would say you propose a resolution to add a comma to page X, line number Y, character number Z.
Mm.
There you go. Then you can make it official.
Interesting. So
please do not do that.
No, but
in a way, though, I mean, it doesn't sound like there's a need for that. Essentially, we're open to interpret it or deliver it in the way that we feel resonates best with us. I mean, really, the only need to make that change would be if we want every single other lodge in the state to deliver it the same way.
Yeah.
So think about this. Think about the words that you say, not in that catechism, but the words in all of our ritual. Does everybody pronounce every word the same way?
No.
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 Absolutely not.
And should that level of detail be policed?
Probably not.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Well, and so I discovered there's one of our past masters who I love dearly, who loses his mind anytime he hears somebody do it as a 3-clause answer. And what I discovered that drives him even battier than giving it as a 3-clause answer instead of a 2-clause answer is when I tell him that both are simultaneously true. And that just drives him up even further than the wall. So it's kind of funny that you said Committee on Work does not police delivery. What about pronunciation on operative versus operative and speculative versus speculative?
That is to what I was referring a moment ago. That level of detail, in my opinion, shouldn't be policed.
Okay. So
excellent.
And in this region, it won't be.
Okay. So do we have any history behind, because, for example, California, in the Fellowcraft lecture, they don't say pomegranate. In California, the official Committee on Work answer is pomgrant. So where do we get stuff like pomgrant and operative and speculative? Where do those pronunciations come from?
I could speculate, but I don't have an answer for you, Gabe.
Okay. I think it's Texans trying to speak English, possibly.
Trying to be hoity-toity.
But so anyway, I've got a couple small list of questions. What was the process of running for the Committee on Work like? Well, can you describe a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a few moments ago to Rhit, it's a statewide election. So even though you're running for a spot, I was running for a spot, I wasn't running. Even though I made myself available for a spot in North Texas, Northeast Texas, it's a statewide election. So it's literally no different than making yourself available for the office of Grand Junior Warden. You've got to travel throughout the state and garner support in all the regions, not just the region in which the vacancy is at. I visited 177 lodges last year.
Wow.
Wow. That's a lot of travel.
Yes, it is. So, did you enjoy it?
I did. I had a completely different sense of where our fraternity's at in December of last year versus in April of last year.
Oh, I'm almost scared to ask. Is it?
We're better off than I thought we were. No, we're better off than I thought we were.
That's the feeling I'm getting, man. I mean, there you go, almost every lodge you go to, you find a couple of brothers there that really have their heart in it.
And that's in every. I'm not going to say not every lodge is that way, but most of the lodges were that way.
Absolutely.
And I sat in lodges with 70, 80 guys. I sat in lodge with 4 or 5 guys. We have all kinds across the state, and I felt good at the end of the year that we're in pretty good shape.
That's a good deal.
So reassuring to hear.
Well, it's all doom and gloom nowadays.
Yeah. Well,
it seems to be, but it's not. We're going to be all right.
Well, and that is one of the things because you have that wider perspective, and because you have this part of your job is to know how well people are doing at this kind of thing. It is very reassuring because we have other major players in the fraternity that are going, "Oh, we're dying," and it's and I don't really want to hear that. I'm not interested in hearing that. So
our numbers are decreasing, but that numbers decreasing doesn't affect necessarily the life of the fraternity.
Yeah,
you can have fewer people and still do as good or a better job.
Yeah, if anything, we might end up doing a lot better per capita if we have less people.
Yeah, a lean machine.
Lean and
there
mean.
You go.
Yeah. So, in what ways do you see the Committee on Work evolving in the future?
This is going to be opinion, obviously.
Oh, for sure.
But I think with the approval of the Grand Lodge cipher book, I think the committee's focus, particularly on ritual forums and teaching our work in lectures, I think it's going to shift more from teaching the words and the phrases to teaching the floor movements in the degrees and inflection and execution of the words in the degrees instead of focusing on learning the words. I think that's a shift that in the next 10 years we're going to see.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing, in your opinion?
I don't know.
That's a good answer.
It's hard to not think it's a good thing, though, but I guess time will tell.
Well,
time will tell. It's purely speculation at this point, but
yeah, kind of the butterfly effect.
Yep. So I really just had a couple of questions on this topic. The first one is, what compelled you to make yourself available for the Committee on Work?
So I'm going to backtrack and tell a little bit of a personal story of my story in Masonry. Whenever I joined the lodge, whenever I saw these pictures on the wall of all these guys that I learned were past masters, I'm like, I'll never be one of those guys. There are all these certificates on the wall. and they told me what those certificates meant. I'm like, I'll never be one of those guys. And slowly, I accomplished both of those. And then I never had any true desire to be on the Committee on Work. I never thought I was qualified, never thought I was good enough, never thought I could do it. And then it was just like out of the blue. A year and a half ago, I learned that Right Worshipful Brown wasn't going to seek re-election, and I just had an epiphany and said, I want to do that. So I started working my butt off to get elected to do it. And now I'm working my butt off for free. So I worked my tail off to get a job to work my tail off, but I'm really enjoying it. So to answer your question, Billy, is there wasn't anything I'd planned long-term for. It was just something that the opportunity arose, and I decided I wanted to do it.
Excellent. Yeah. And I've attended one of your forums so far, and I have to say it was very educational. And I'm definitely glad you're there. The second question I had was, I guess, a little bit more general. Is there anything that you wish more Masons knew about the Committee on Work?
I'm going to amend your question just a hair, and I'm going to say I wish more lodges knew that the Committee on Work was there to offer resources to them, particularly when it comes to graded degrees or scoring a degree and certificates of merit. We've got 290 lodges in this region, and only 2 lodges so far this year have taken advantage of the program to have a degree graded.
Oh, wow.
I wish more lodges either knew about that program, knew how to go about that program, and took advantage of that program. One of the lodges in District 14 over in Dallas County, I'm not going to say their name, they've never done one before, but they did one. They didn't do great at it, but they came to me afterwards, and it boosted their confidence so much after the fact that they had done it that their degree work since then has improved.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. So the journey in itself, right, is almost as valuable as the end result?
Absolutely, if not more.
Yeah, it's got to be intimidating. I mean, it's like, yeah, we're going to volunteer ourselves to be put on the chopping block, weighed and measured. But that's not what you're there for. Even if you tank it, you're going to have something that you're going to be able to offer to improve that lodge.
The score is going to be what the score is.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing is not to forget that we're there to initiate a candidate. We can't lose focus of that.
Right.
The score will be what the score will be. And you're right. I've never been on a degree team that had a degree graded, but I can only imagine it's intimidating with a guy sitting in the corner wearing a tie with a clipboard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when they got done, they were proud of themselves for having put themselves through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that ego boost improved their degree work since then.
Absolutely. I bet they won't be scared to do that again. That's the thing. You got to break the seal, I guess, because it's something that's always intrigued me, but honestly, it's been a little intimidating, because I don't think in your mind you'll ever convince yourself you're ready. You just got to do it. Pull the trigger and get graded.
It's like with anything else. You got to take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Well, and in your answer too, I hear a challenge. Who's going to be number 3?
Yeah. So when you're graded, you're graded on the words and the footwork, right?
So it's more than that, and you're graded on the words, the procedures, which is moving about the lodge. You're graded on the lodge room setup. If your lodge room isn't set up in accordance with Form 75, there's deductions from there. You're graded on your delivery of the words and lodge decorum. Actually, visitors or members on the sidelines can cause points to be deducted from the team if they cause a disturbance.
I like it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I spend a lot of time with whenever the lodge is opened, I'll visit with both the degree team and everybody in the lodge to make sure everyone understands this is the process, here's the procedures, here's what we're going to do, and make sure everyone understands what can and can't happen.
So could lodges contact you and get that information beforehand so like they could pull up Form 70, and do all that stuff before you get there so they know they're ready?
They can go straight to their district instructor. I've actually written up a document with the instructions and FAQs, if you so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Each district instructor has a revised copy of those graded degree FAQs and instructions.
Gotcha. Okay. Easy enough.
And if you can't get one from your district instructor, then call me and I'll send it to you.
Gotcha. So let's dig into the meat a little bit. What is an esoteric certificate or an instructional certificate?
So an esoteric certificate is it's a certificate of proficiency that demonstrates that the holder of the certificate has tested verbally and been deemed to be proficient in the work and lectures associated with the classification of his certificate. Certificates are classified as an A certificate, a B certificate, or a C certificate. A C certificate, the owner of a C certificate has got to demonstrate proficiency in opening and closing an entered apprentice Mason's Lodge, a fellow craft Mason's Lodge, a master Mason's Lodge, demonstrate proficiency in the catechism of each of those degrees, the questions and answers for the EA, fellow craft, and masters, and the Tyler's Oath. That's for a Class C certificate. A Class B certificate is all that, plus the conferring of the entered apprentice degree, the fellow craft degree, and the master mason's degree, excluding the monitorial parts, the charge it and included and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
A Class A certificate is all of that plus the lectures of each of the 3 degrees.
Gotcha. So
go ahead.
I was going to say, if you got your B certificate, you can play any part in any degree, right?
You don't have to have a certificate to play a part in a degree.
Well,
the certificate just demonstrates that you're tested proficiently.
Gotcha.
So you mentioned that we have to demonstrate proficiency and all that to get the different certificates. How exactly do I go get one, though?
So the Committee on Work hosts ritual forums where we teach and exemplify the ritual, and then we host certificate examinations. And during the examinations, that's what we do. That's you exam or test for a proficiency certificate.
So what's kind of that process? How does that start out? Because I know forum and exam, you usually come in for the forum first and then exam afterwards.
Okay, so I want to change that mindset that you just said, Rhit, and I don't mean that to be negative, but I'm taking the approach that those are 2 different events. The ritual forum is an event, and the certificate examination is an event. I want to encourage everybody to come to a ritual forum, whether or not you're going to sit for an exam, whether or not you're ready. I don't care. Don't worry about the exam. I want everyone to come to a ritual forum and to learn the ritual. For those who are interested in taking an exam for a certificate, we usually have the forum in the mornings. We'll break for lunch. Then after lunch, those who want to take the exam will gather up and we'll divide up. And if you got 5 or 6 guys that want to take an exam for an A certificate, 3 or 4 guys that want to take an exam for a C certificate, we'll group those guys together with a proctor or a moderator, and we'll put them in a part of the room or the building, and we'll do a round-robin exam. Now, what I mean by round-robin is, take the catechism, for example. The proctor may ask the first question of the catechism. The first guy taking the exam will answer that question. Then he'll turn around and ask the next question to the next guy, who will answer it. Then ask the next question to the next guy. And we'll go around the room, around the table, asking each other questions and answering questions. When it gets down to the lectures or the degree conferrals, we'll usually change when speakers change, or change it where a paragraph would probably break during the lecture.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're not going to come in and have to give every single word, but you don't know what you're going to be given. You got to know it all, but you're not going to recite every single word.
And that's exactly right. And so we did an examination down in Ferris Lodge a few weeks ago, and there was a single fella who wanted to take a Class C certificate. But what we did, so he wouldn't feel bad sitting there by himself having to recite it all, we put 2 or 3 district instructors there with him, and they went round robin around the table with him, so he wasn't having to do it all by himself.
Oh, gotcha. That was nice of you, Jim.
That's right.
So, how often do you have to renew your certificate?
So the first year when you receive your first certificate, it's good for 1 year. When you go the following year to renew it, your renewal is good for 1 year. On your third exam, when you sit and take your third exam and you pass it, that certificate can be good for 3 years. And I say can be because the committeeman has the discretion to issue a 1 year or a 3 year, depending on how strong efficiency is.
Got you. To where it's like, yeah, you passed an A, but it was an A minus, so come back next year.
Yeah, I will sign this and issue your certificate, but I'm not going to issue a 3 year one. I want you to come back and do it again next year.
Gotcha. So does that renewal process ever end?
No, it doesn't. The Grand Lodge will issue a lifetime certificate after you've tested for 25 years and held a certificate for 25 years in the same class. So that means you got to have a Class A certificate for 25 years. Then you're issued a life certificate, which never expires. But even then, several guys continue to take exams after they get their life certificate and try to get a 50-year certificate.
Oh,
I didn't know that existed.
And we issued some 60-year certificates this past year. 60-year esoteric certificate.
Wow.
I wanted to jump in and ask a question, kind of, if a Mason goes and he gets his esoteric certificate in just any one of them, and he lapses, does that process start over again from zero? Or how does that work?
He still gets credit for he still keeps his credit from the years he had it. So he would have, say he had 5 years and let it go for 3 years and he started up again, he would start over at 6 years.
Okay.
He still gets credit for those years before his lapse. He doesn't get credit for the years that he was lapsed.
So it's cumulative, but it doesn't have to be consecutive.
Yes, that's correct.
Gotcha.
All right, boys, I'm going to go test for 100 years off and on and then go get my 50 year.
There you go. So, Jim, do you happen to know how many Masons have a certificate in Texas?
Well, of course I do.
Would you enlighten us?
So, this is as of last year. So all the guys who have tested this year, their certificates will be issued at Grand Lodge next year. So this is the most, as of Grand Lodge of this year, we have a total of 1,720 certificate holders in the state. 1,720. Now, of that 1,720, 1,589 of those are active certificates, with 131 of those being lifetime certificates.
How many are A certificates? Do you know?
1,178.
Oh, wow.
So what is
223 Bs and 188 Cs.
Why are there not more certificates? I can kind of understand the A certificate. Not everybody digs into the lecture. That's what surprises me, why it's so heavy there. Why do you think more guys don't go for that C and B?
So as of today, we've got in the Grand Lodge of Texas 69,118 Master Masons. So when you do this breakdown, it's about 2%. About 2% of the Master Masons have a certificate. I asked you this afternoon, Rhit, how many members your lodge had. Do you remember me asking you that?
Uh-huh.
So I pulled the esoteric records for your lodge, and your lodge is about 3%. So your lodge is slightly above the state average of 2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you to answer the question: is why is it so low in your lodge? And I guarantee you the answer you come up with is going to be the same answer that I can come up with at the state level, but why it's so low.
It probably is because it's just guys getting off their duff and doing it.
That's exactly right.
I think a lot of guys are ready, are very close, need just a little bit of polish, and they're there.
And all it takes is that one guy in a lodge to tell somebody it's not worth doing. And that seed of it's not worth it, why are you wasting your time doing that?
Yeah.
It's like a cancer. So, but lodges that are more positive and encouraging, I think you'll see a higher percentage. But again, I'm speculating.
No, I think you're absolutely right, because if you're, I mean, even if you're a lodge that is just ambivalent to it, that doesn't talk about it, it could be just as bad. But you're right. If you say something negative, well, that's even worse. But if you're not promoting it in your lodge, there's no way that's going to change. And
we've got lodges that are very heavy with ritualists that have a few certificate holders in the lodge, but the lodge does not display certificates because it doesn't fit the decor.
I do have to say that when I do visit a lodge and I see a wall of ritual certificates, it is pretty impressive.
I think it is.
Well, it is. Yeah.
But let me throw a twist at you. What does that certificate mean? It means that the fella who owns the certificate has tested and demonstrated proficiency in the words of our ritual. That certificate doesn't make him a ritualist. He may not be able to perform the first part of any degree, but he knows the words. That certificate doesn't make him a teacher because he may not understand the philosophical or moral teachings of anything he's saying, but he knows how to regurgitate those words. So while the certificates are important and they're a sense of personal pride for a lot of people, the certificate doesn't make you a better ritualist or doesn't make you a better teacher or instructor. That's the lodge's job. The lodge's job is to hone those men and to make them ritualists and make them instructors. That certificate is a start.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, because you're right. I mean, just because you're a good parrot doesn't mean you're a good teacher.
Yeah, and keep in mind, guys, it's a certificate of proficiency, not of excellence. I mean, there's a level of that's proficient. There's a level that's excellent, and no one's excellent. So that certificate tells you that guy can regurgitate words proficiently. That's all it does.
Yeah. No, and I went through that, because I ran through and got my A certificate pretty quickly after I got raised, and I let it lapse after, I went through that period of, what am I doing this for? What is the purpose? Because I originally did it to help my lodge out. So that motivation runs out eventually, and you got to find your own why of why you want to go up there and do that, and get yourself examined. But it's something that, for me, was a game changer. When you finally get all that down and you get a little nod from someone else that knows it, that's like, all right, you're doing okay.
So my journey was very similar. The district instructor of our district was the secretary of our lodge, and he taught me not my catechisms, but he taught me the degree work and the lectures. And whenever he gave me that nod that I was good enough, I felt good about that. And that's whenever I started delivering and executing to a higher level, because I had that self-confidence now, not from the certificate necessarily, but from getting someone else's blessing that I was good enough.
Yeah, and I think that goes a long way, because, working with guys that I've always admired, like Sam Holden and Claude Germany, when I leave working with them and they say, man, keep it up, you're doing great. That's really where that all comes from. It just is kind of symbolized in that certificate, because
I think both of those guys were around whenever they wrote the ritual back in 1855.
Yeah, one of the most.
But they're great guys. I love both of them to death, and I'm telling you right now, you can't find two better guys than Sam Holden and Claude Germany. You're not going to find them.
No.
And I went and visited with Sam after I got elected to go over a few things and make sure I had it just right. And I went down to Crowley, sat in Sam's living room. We drank coffee and we talked about ritual for a couple hours. And never he looked at me and said, "You're going to do all right." That was all I needed.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the most special moments so far in my Masonic career was when I returned my master's proficiency. And I did the grip and word with Sam Levacy, who was a 50-year member of our lodge. And Sam was an amazing guy. He turned 100 last year, and he passed away shortly afterwards. But anytime that Sam gave me praise, it was just an amazing feeling. And when I got done, I gave the questions and the answers. I asked myself the proficiency, and then he did the grip and word with me, and he told me it was the best master's proficiency he'd ever seen, and I thought I was going to die right there.
Makes you feel good.
It was just one of the most incredible things ever, you know?
That is lodge mentoring at its most basic level right there.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that certificate that you're going to get is just the symbol of all that hard work you've put in. It's that reminder, you know.
Yeah, it's a source of, it should be a source of personal pride, but it shouldn't be what you strive for. You shouldn't strive just to have the certificate in a frame. You should strive to have the knowledge that goes with it.
You got it. Yeah.
To balance that out, though, Sam did yell at me once during the middle of a degree for doing something wrong as senior deacon. So,
okay, we'll move on past that.
Yeah,
we'll just balance that one out, though.
Gabe, you want to go ahead and pick up? I think he covered my last two questions with our little conversation there.
Yeah, fantastic. So there used to only be the one, as I understand it, there only used to be one esoteric certificate, and then that got split up into the A, B, and C certificates.
That's correct.
When did that change occur, and what was the impetus for it?
So I don't know the impetus. That predates my time in the fraternity. But I can tell you it was right about 20 years ago, 21 years ago, because this past year, the Grand Lodge issued the very first ever lifetime Class B certificate. So that was 25. Wow. So I said 20. It had to be at least 25 years ago this year. So probably 26 years ago that changed, because James Roy Elliott down in Ellis County was the first recipient and the only recipient of a Class B lifetime esoteric certificate.
Wow. I didn't know those existed either.
He's the first and only one. That was at Grand Lodge this year.
So if we wanted to look and see what took place, we'd start 25 years ago in Grand Lodge proceedings then.
Or maybe
I would start 25, probably 26 years ago, because it had been approved at 1 year that he would have taken his test the following year for the Class B. So I'd start with 26 years ago and start reading there.
Yeah, I don't
know what was going on that would prompt that.
So how long does it take the average brother Joe Schmo to study for and pass the A, B, and C cert exams?
I have no idea. It depends on how you define average.
So how long did it take you, Jim, to get your A certificate?
So I was a late bloomer. I didn't start off wanting to be a ritualist, but once I set my mind to it, I earned it. I never earned a B or a C. I set my mind that I was going to earn a certificate, and it was going to be an A, and I got it the year that I wanted to get it. So the secretary of my lodge was our district instructor, and I went to the lodge and sat down with him a couple of times a week. And within a year, I had it all down, good enough to take my first exam. My first certificate exam was with Terry Stogner. Remember, he was on the committee.
Yeah.
And, it was intimidating.
Yeah, it was.
I remember it being. I remember when it was over, I just looked around and said, "Did I pass?" And
I know that feeling.
And let's talk about that. So taking the exam for a certificate, it shouldn't be easy. Okay, the process should be difficult, so that you earn it. But the process shouldn't be intimidating, and that's something I'm really trying to, not necessarily change, but trying to be very cognizant of, is to make sure those exams are as least intimidating as they can be for guys, especially guys doing it for the first time, because they're among brothers. They need to feel like they're among brothers.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is I tell candidates on up to seasoned Master Masons that if you're in your comfort zone, get ready. Masonry will kick you out of it. And if it's not,
it dang sure will.
Yeah, if it's not, then it's not doing the job right. Because if you want to become a better man, there has to be some resistance. You have to feel intimidated. And once you get through it,
yeah, you've got to work for it and you've got to earn it.
Yeah. Because I can totally relate. You know, I think my first one was with Terry Stockner, and it was very intimidating. But when I was done, it took me a few days to recoup. But when I was done, it was like, okay, all right, I can do that again.
Yeah,
wasn't that bad.
It seems to me like you can also look at it like the fact that you just stepped foot in the door is probably, you know, it shows an initiative that, you know, is more than the average brother, right? I mean, especially if you look at the percentage of those who do have.
Oh yeah, I mean, having a certificate, period, regardless of class, you're in the top 2.5%.
Yeah, you're 2%er. And I, even as intimidating as it was, I was very welcomed, you know, because I think they sense just what Billy said. You just stepping in that door, you've took a bigger leap than most Masons has. And even if they're the meanest old codger out there, they recognize that. I mean, Sam Holden's a perfect example. I thought that guy, when you first meet him, you think, man, this guy is mean as he can get. But he's a big old, you know, just a teddy bear.
He's a teddy bear.
Yeah.
He's a teddy bear. Love that guy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you. And no better way to earn the respect of those guys than taking the work serious.
And that's exactly what. You give it the respect it's due.
Yeah. I mean, if you're having trouble with past masters, go get your certificate and put that on the wall for them to see. And they'll start taking a little more, giving you a little more respect.
They sure will.
Yeah.
So I had another couple of questions on this section too. So I understand that a lot of lodges used to have a requirement, and I've heard of one or two that have brought it back, that their principal officers had to have a ritual certificate before making themselves available for one of those officer stations. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that requirement, I guess?
So, Billy, that used to be Grand Lodge law used to require, before a man could be installed as a junior warden, senior warden, or master, that he either A, held a certificate from the Committee on Work, or B, was certified by his district instructor to hold office. So I think that's where that came from, that the Grand Lodge said you had to have one of the two, so a lot of lodges adopted the certificate over the DI certification. So I think that's where it came from. I was in the line at my lodge, a warden, whenever that law was in place. And that's part of what prompted me to get a certificate. But it changed while I was in the line. And I was against the change. I thought it was because my lodge had done it, it's what I knew, I thought it was a good idea. Now I don't feel that way. Having a certificate, like I said a few moments ago, doesn't make you a lodge leader, doesn't make you a ritualist, doesn't make you a lodge teacher. It just means you can regurgitate the words.
Right.
So I do not support that belief anymore. If that answers your question.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, just recently having gone through the paperwork, I guess, you know, as a newly elected junior warden, I did notice that there was still a question on there on whether you had shown proficiency in opening and closing the lodge, at least. And you had to have someone sign off on that.
So that's a form 101 that you got to have you either have to have a certificate, a DI certification, or now the lodge can approve your proficiency.
Right. Okay. So at the Grand Lodge level, though, are there any esoteric requirements for a Grand Lodge officer or someone looking to make themselves available for that?
The answer is none, not at all. The only exception which is not a Grand Lodge officer, is that the Committee on Work, the Grand Lodge statute specify that after being elected to the Committee on Work, the member shall make himself proficient in the work and lectures. But none of the other appointed officers or elected officers of the Grand Lodge have any esoteric requirements at all. Okay.
Does it give a timeline for that requirement that they must make themselves proficient in the work?
It does not. It just says, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have a book in front of me, that after being elected, the members shall make themselves proficient in the working lectures, or something along those lines.
Okay.
I can't tell you where that's at, but it's chapter 17 is where all the Committee on Work stuff's at. But I don't know the exact article number.
Gotcha. Well, I think, Gabe, in our next section, we went over a lot of the forum and exam stuff. There's a couple of questions in here I wanted to run past you, Jim, though.
Okay.
How would a lodge go about hosting a forum and exam?
They contact me directly. And I'm filling the calendar up right now for 2019. So if you got a lodge listening who would like to hold a forum or an exam, you can do just a forum, you can do just an exam, or you can do both. Mm-hmm. Email me or call me, and we'll talk about it.
What's the cost for hosting one?
So the cost is there's an administrative fee of $50,
mm-hmm.
and then travel expenses for the committeemen to and from. And that travel expense is paid set by Grand Lodge at 40 cents per mile.
Gotcha. And then so they would cover those fees and then have a meal for the day. And that's pretty much it, right?
If they chose to. There's no requirement for them to have a meal.
Gotcha.
But yeah, traditionally, if they do a forum and an exam, there's at least a lunch.
Okay, so if they wanted to just host a forum, which I highly recommend, those are extremely educational. How long do those take?
Shoot for 3 to 3.5 hours.
Gotcha.
So this year, I've got a set format that I use for the forum as far as what we teach and what we exemplify. That format or that itinerary or that outline will be completely different next year. So if you go to a forum this year, don't not go to one next year, because we're going to be going over completely different stuff next year versus this year.
Gotcha. No, Gabe had already mentioned Sam Levacy, who earned his 25-year life certificate, but he went every single year.
A lot of guys do.
And yeah. Sam practiced the work every night before he went to bed. He would start, Rhit, if I'm correct on this, he said that he would start with opening an entered apprentice lodge and go straight to the end and do everything.
Yeah.
Before bed every night.
Did he sleep like an hour and a half a night?
I mean, he was an animal.
Yeah. When you're 100 years old, there's only so much you would do in the day.
He was
right.
unique.
I followed that.
I asked him one time, Jim, I said, so why do you, if you've got your life certificate, why do you keep going back, to get an examination? He said, I got to go see what these jokers are changing.
Yeah, make sure
I respect that.
Make sure they don't go bohemian on you. He would always.
I respect that.
He would describe anytime somebody engaged in aberrations and distanced themselves from the work, he would say that they would be going bohemian.
Bohemian.
Yeah. No bohemian talk.
So I wanted to ask, how much efficacy do forums have in comparison to normal instruction by DIs? Like, what is my, bang to buck ratio on talking to a DI versus going to a forum, and what's the difference basically?
So I don't want to attempt or have the perception that I'm degrading the work of a district instructor, because that's not what I'm fixing to do here. But the work of a district instructor and the work of the committeeman are not the same. The committeeman's job is to demonstrate and teach at a higher level. You come to a forum, we exemplify how to perform a degree. We take questions and answers, and we walk through it. The district instructor is going to get a lot more in the weeds and details and work one-on-one with a lodge or a group of guys to really hone their performance and their understanding of the ritual. So think of it as an airplane. The committee teaches at about 30,000. The DIs work at about 10,000 feet. So they're much more in the details and the weeds than the committee is when it comes to the rituals and the forums, because it's more one-on-one with a DI.
Gotcha.
It is, you got 50 guys at a forum, and you're demonstrating how to put on the entered apprentice degree.
Yeah, so like professor versus tutor, basically.
There you have it. That's a very good way to put it.
So
I'm the professor, by the way. If you weren't.
no, I think, yeah, Dr. Rumsey. What is something that you find that brethren are pretty consistently clueless about?
Regarding the ritual or just life in general?
Well, I mean, do we want to field that as two separate questions? Because I feel like that can easily be fielded as two separate questions.
I don't really have an answer for this. No, I don't have an answer for this at all.
Okay.
It's pretty sporadic what they're clueless on.
Yeah, and clueless is a pretty harsh word.
Well, maybe it's, do you find a problem area that more brothers seem to have, challenges with than others?
Okay, I do. Something just came to mind that we see a lot, and your lodge may not have this issue, so this may sound foreign to you, as foreign as it sounded to me. But we have lodges out here that believe that you can open a Fellowcraft Mason's Lodge and call down to an Entered Apprentice Lodge, and call back up to a Fellowcraft Lodge and close it.
That's
Our
curious.
ritual doesn't allow for that. You have to open a Master's Lodge, and you can call down from a Master's Lodge, but you can't call down from a Fellowcraft Lodge, nor can you call a Fellowcraft Lodge or an Entered Apprentice Lodge from labor to refreshment. You can't do either of those. But we have lodges that do it every day.
Wait a minute. Now that's a new one to me. There is
no process, procedure, or ritual in the Grand Lodge of Texas for calling an Entered Apprentice Lodge or a Fellowcraft Mason's Lodge from labor to refreshment.
Rhit, did you just out us?
Well, I'm just thinking of like a scenario. Like,
I don't think we've ever done that though. So
right?
We've never done it. But I'm just thinking of like stated meeting. Something comes up, and your officers have to regroup. I've heard of
exactly. If you open an EA or Fellowcraft, you have no option but to close it. And once you close it for a stated meeting, you can't reopen it.
Huh.
Wow, that is interesting.
And that is a benefit to opening a Master's Lodge first, then calling down to an EA or Fellowcraft and conducting your business in the lower lodge, but having the Master's Lodge open.
Ooh, that.
Right.
Wait, so so let me run this scenario. You open the Masters up, you double down to an EA for your stated meeting. You run into trouble. Now you need to go to refreshment. Do you have to close that EA lodge?
You close the EA lodge, but your Master's Lodge is the one that's still open for your meeting. So you close that EA lodge. Your Master's Lodge is already at refreshment. So you deal with your regroup. Then when you come back in, you open a new EA lodge. You still have one set of minutes because your Master's Lodge is the master set of minutes, and you keep going.
I love it. Oh. That's so wildly like what, and it's just fantastic.
So you would open it just like you do when you double down.
Exactly, because you're at refreshment. Technically, you would have to purge.
Yeah.
After that, it would be the shortened form as you were doubling down. We have a lot of lodges that think that when the district deputy makes an official visit, they have to do all their business in a Master Mason's Lodge, and that's not true either.
Yeah.
You can open a Master's Lodge, receive the district deputy, then call down, invite your EAs and Fellowcrafts in, and conduct your stated meeting.
Yeah, we've done that one.
And I was going to say that, Jim, if you're not familiar, Rhit has been on a campaign recently to get more folks to open in Master's Lodges and then double down, as opposed to opening up straight into an EA. So,
do you know that opening an EA straight or a Fellowcraft straight's a relatively new phenomenon that didn't start until 1999?
Oh yeah. No, Rhit was telling me about that. But I'm on this train. It's a good train to be on. I don't know. What's your take on? Should we bring that back? Is that something that we need to push harder?
Here's Jim Rumsey is pretty much opposed of Grand Lodge mandating a lodge do anything.
Yes,
but I'm in favor of lodges taking the incentive and the initiative and doing that on their own. I'm in favor of that process. I'm not in favor of it being mandated by Grand Lodge.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Laissez-faire.
So one of the questions I have was, what is the best method for a Texas Mason to find a forum that's being held in their area?
So there's several ways. The first one is the Grand Master publishes a Grand Master's directory each year that has all the contact information for the district deputies, the district instructors, all the committees' contact information, the Grand Master's schedule, and all that stuff in it. In the back of that book is the form and exam schedule for each of the 5 Committee on Work members. The other avenue is the Grand Lodge of Texas website has a Committee on Work calendar on it that's up to date.
Okay.
And in this region, I operate a Committee on Work Facebook page, which is Jim Rumsey Committee on Work, North Central and Northeast Texas. And there's an up-to-date calendar on that Facebook page as well. And 3 of the other committeemen do a Facebook page also. Dwayne Anthony does one, Chuck Forsyth does one, and Keith Reynolds does one.
Yeah, and Chuck's pretty close to our area too. I know he's having one in Cleburne this weekend.
So he and I share the western border of mine, the eastern border of his connect, but it gets fuzzy right along that Johnson County area and all the way up. So the regions that the committee is assigned to, that committeeman is responsible for recommending a district instructor for those districts. If a lodge opts to have their officers certified by the committee for a Vanguard Award, the committeeman in the region would do that. The committeeman in the region would be the one that would go grade or score a degree for a lodge. But a lodge can actually invite any of the 5 committeemen they want to come host a foreman exam. Does not have to be the committeeman in that region.
Ah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So even though Cleburne and Bowie both are technically in my region, Chuck does forms and exams there. And I asked the guys about it, and what they told me was that Jimmy Henley wouldn't do it, so they invited the West Texas guy years ago, and that's just kind of the way it's always been since then.
Oh, interesting. He was.
Yeah. You can invite any committeeman to come do a foreman exam, but if you're going to have a degree graded or have some business in your lodge, then it would be the regional committeeman.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, and I guess in a way, though, that kind of answers the next question I had was about how far in advance do you usually plan your calendar. But you just said it's in the Grand Master, it's in a published document.
So my calendar's got to be approved and submitted for 2019. It's got to be to the printers week after Grand Lodge. So the end of January, I've got to have the year finalized in order for it to be in that book. Now, things that I've added 2 forums since then. You'll see them on the Facebook page and on the Grand Lodge calendar, but not in the book, obviously.
Gotcha. So on our next section, we kind of did the same thing. We covered a lot of the questions, but who picks district instructors?
So by statute, in Grand Lodge law, the district instructor is recommended by the committeeman who has the jurisdiction over the district, but the Grand Master makes the appointment.
Gotcha. You kind of recommend and he appoints?
Yeah, and that's actually in the law that the Committee on Work shall recommend brethren for the office of district instructor to the Grand Master each year.
How many DIs are there total?
So there's 1 per district. So we have 142 districts, and then each committeeman is allowed up to 5 district instructors at large. So I currently have 5 in this region. So I've got 49 districts plus 5 DIs at large. So in our region, we've got 54 district instructors.
Gotcha. So we're covered up in them here.
Yeah. Now we're going to make, and we're making some changes next year. But we're moving 1 district instructor at large from my region to Chuck's region, so I can open up another district instructor at large position because I got a vacancy in East Texas I got to fill. So we try to have the district instructors at large strategically placed throughout the region. But yeah, we're still going to have 54 next year.
And what do they serve? Just like if a district instructor's busy, they'll come in and help a lodge out if need be?
That's right. So they have the powers of a district instructor as far as being able to grade a lodge with a district deputy, as far as being able to certify lodge officers for a Vanguard Award or for installation requirements. But they have no duties that they have to do. This year, the Grand Master said every district instructor has to hold a district school of instruction. The district instructors at large don't have that because they don't have a district they're assigned to.
Gotcha.
They're also the ones, so they're the support for the district instructors that are there, and also up in Northeast Texas, up along the Red River, we got some districts up there with very, very few certified individuals. By certified, I mean have a certificate. And I've got one district up there that there's no certificate holder in the entire county. So I've got a DI at large going up there and doing the duties with a district deputy and doing the school of instruction because there's not a district instructor in that district.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Well, then that's good you have them so they can fill those holes.
Yeah.
So, and I'm assuming their contact information, district instructor, is going to be the same thing in that Grand Master's book, right?
It is. The district instructors and district deputy Grand Masters are all listed in district order. And at the end of that section is a list of all the DDGMs at large and the DIs at large.
Gotcha. Call them. They're very approachable. Usually,
Absolutely.
I should say.
Usually,
And they want to be utilized.
They do. I know ours, especially Tom. He's been great. We had a fantastic one before, Billy Ray Fisher. But Tom Hancock has come in, and anytime we call on him, he's there.
Well, good. That's what he's there for.
Yeah.
So recently, Grand Lodge voted to remove the requirement that district instructors be past masters. What's your take on that change, and how do you see it affecting our state?
So it's too early to tell how it's going to affect the state. What I'm worried about is that if we have a district instructor who is not a past master, that he may face some challenges with the member lodges in his district, particularly if he's grading someone and how well they execute opening a master's lodge for a staged meeting. He's never done it himself.
Like a street cred issue.
I'm worried. I'm worried about him having the respect and support of the member lodges, not the other way around. In this region, I can't speak for anybody else, we don't have any district instructors who are not past masters, and there aren't going to be any who aren't past masters next year either. But time will tell how this works out.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand maybe if a district was hurting for one and that was the only option. I'm glad maybe that it's there.
Yeah.
But to your point earlier, they're kind of the tutor to the professor. I use Tom Hancock for way more than just the ritual. And he is an extremely good resource on how to run the lodge administrative side and everything,
Yeah.
And I think that comes a lot from his experience as a past master.
And it does. And the more it's if you've not been a worshipful master, you don't understand what I'm going to say.
Yes.
You don't, when you're going through the chairs, you don't think about it. You think, oh, it's just a job to do. When you're doing it, a lot of things happen that you're like, what the hell do I do now? and you can only look in that blue book so many times and it not make any sense where you've got to pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah.
And ideally, you're going to call someone who's A, available, B, knowledgeable, and C, have the wisdom or the experience that can answer your question and help you out.
Yeah.
Those are the DIs are the biggest benefit because they're there to teach the ritual, but they're also there to support the lodges. And the district deputy has got a different take than the district instructor. The district deputy is the eyes and ears and the personal representative of the Grand Master. So his job is to observe and report. The district instructor is there to help and assist.
So I did have a question about the district instructors too. Is in the, I guess, who would they report to if they did have a question, right? Like, would they report to the district deputy grand master, to the committee on work? or do they act independently?
So they're not independent. So they're appointed by the Grand Master. So at the end of the day, the buck stops with the Grand Master, and that's who they are responsible to.
Okay.
They have a dotted line to the District Deputy Grand Master because they are a member of the District Service Team, which he heads. And when it comes to the ritual, they have a dotted line to the committeemen in their region.
So my next question was, who can change the ritual? But I think we made that pretty clear. That's just the Grand West that can change the ritual.
The ritual itself, yeah.
Yeah. Gabe, did you have your next question's loaded though?
Yeah. So now I am going to preface this with you within the limitations of our obligations and what we can freely discuss online. So advance apologies to our listeners if it gets very vague, but we're working within the limitations of our obligations and the English language, which as Texans, none of us know very well. What is something in the ritual that you would like to see changed?
Keep in mind, Jim, I'm going to tell George Havens exactly what you say.
So there is this issue with a comma.
Okay.
Yes.
No, all seriousness aside, there's nothing particular I would say I would like to see changed with the ritual. What I would not be opposed to is that if someone proposed a change to the ritual that made sense, I wouldn't be against it just for the sake of not wanting to change the ritual. Our ritual is a one-size-fits-all ritual, but Freemasonry is not one-size-fits-all. Every lodge has got its unique personality. Every lodge is even situated slightly differently. And I'll give you an example. Our ritual and our fellowcraft degree, without getting into the esoteric parts of it,
yes,
there is a situation in the latter part of the first section where a candidate is paraded through the room without his blindfold on. And you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Also, for our listeners to clarify, paraded is a very odd choice of word to use. He is guided. It is not a display or anything like that. We get to show him something.
No. Yeah, so our ritual specifies where that starts and where that new initiate is standing when that ceremony ends. We have a lodge in Corsicana, Texas, Corsicana Lodge number 174. They have a 2-story lodge room. Their lodge room, has a big open floor plan like y'all's does, and they have a loft. And they have a winding stairway that goes up to that loft, and there are 2 doors in that loft. And they utilize that loft and that stairway for that particular section of that degree.
Oh, wow.
That is cool.
To be technical about it, our ritual doesn't allow for that because our ritual says you have to start here and end here. So I would like to see our ritual be more accommodating for situations like that and other things along those lines, if that makes sense to our listeners.
Yes.
I think it should, absolutely. Wait, but I want to, what lodge was it again? Corsicana
174.
174 road trip, boys.
I was there Monday night. I went down there and made an official visit with the deputy down there Monday night, and I've heard about it, but I saw it for the first time this week. It's impressive. Tacking
on some questions based off of the answer, because this kind of fed into some of the other questions I have. In the fellowcraft degree, what is your, and I know that this is not according to the Committee on Work, the proper procedure, but I guess from a personal perspective, what's your take on the walking lecture that sometimes you see done, and sometimes lodges include what's called the dewdrop lecture, which is not part of Texas work? What's your take on that?
It's not, but there's a past Grand Master here in Dallas County who used to deliver it pretty regularly. So I'm going to give you a very vague answer, Gabe, and that is if there were a resolution put forth to amend the fellowcraft lecture to be given from the floor, or what you referred to as a walking fellowcraft lecture, I wouldn't necessarily be against it. It's important to note, however, that resolution has been proposed twice in our Grand Lodge history and defeated both times.
Really? When?
18, you catch me kind of off guard, 1870s and 1890s.
Time to try again.
Yeah, right? you had me scared. I'm thinking.
Hey, Rhit, how do you feel about drafting some resolutions?
Oh, I'm just waiting for
the deadline has passed. July 15th was the deadline for this year.
I think long term anyway, Jim. I've got a whole list of these things.
So another question that I had is that, like in England, you'll see this.
Let me interrupt you. I want to expand a little bit. Here, about 5 years ago, there was a resolution proposed to allow the master's lecture to be given from a floor, particularly the part of that deals with explaining the emblems on the master's carpet. To allow that part of the lecture to be given from the floor, standing in front of a mural or painting or something representing the same, to demonstrate that to the candidate during the degree. And that
like a
passed.
master's carpet?
That resolution was proposed by Brayhan Lodge in Lavernia, Texas. Their lodge room, 360 degrees in their room, their wall is a mural of the depictions of the master's degree. And they proposed a resolution and got it passed that you can give a master's degree walking around the room with the candidate. So it's not far-fetched to think that couldn't happen in a fellowcraft lecture.
Oh, I love that. So, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if I talk to you offline about that.
Okay. But it's also important to note that even though that passed, if you do a graded degree, the lecture must be given from the east.
Oh, interesting. But still, the freedom to do that,
Yeah.
That's important.
So kind of two questions based off of freedom to do things. In England, you'll see this a lot. I know that in different jurisdictions, you'll see this. Kentucky, for example, has 4 different rituals, and it just depends on what lodge you go to. Do you think that there's benefit to having more than one ritual per jurisdiction? I mean, they're all kind of the same Hiramic legend, but they're just different.
Okay, but they're not. So I want to tell you the answer to the question is no. I don't see a benefit to it. I'm going to qualify that. Grand Lodge of Louisiana has 2 rituals. They have the Scottish Rite ritual, first 3 degrees, and they have a York Rite ritual, first 3 degrees. In Texas, we have a York Rite ritual, first 3 degrees. And although both rituals contain a variation of the Hiramic legend, the legends are not the same. And if you're not aware that there are 2 unique rituals being practiced, you're caught off guard by seeing the differences in degrees if you're not aware of it. So I'm not in favor of having 2 different sets of degrees in Texas.
I like that. That's a pretty good qualification.
And we can talk offline about the details of those degrees and what the differences are, but it wouldn't be appropriate to speak about on a recording.
Obviously not. Yeah. This one has been kind of a hot button topic as of late, but a couple of years ago there was a bit of a kerfuffle about the Chamber of Reflection. There were some Grandmaster's edicts about not doing it anymore and that kind of thing. Do you have any insight as to what the heck happened, why we're not allowed to do that anymore, and whether or not it would be appropriate to do it all?
Because the Grand Lodge, so let me answer that in reverse order. A, it is not appropriate to do chamber reflection in Texas. The edict or the Grand Master decision, and the ritual is it's plain. Article 127 specifies that no ritual except for that promulgated in this Grand Lodge can be used in this Grand Lodge, and also says something along the lines of no preparation of candidates except that which is depicted in the monitor of the lodge can be utilized. So by doing a chamber reflection, you're not doing what the monitor says you shall do, and therefore you're violating Article 127. So it's not just a violation of the ritual, you're violating Grand Lodge law by doing that. Secondly, Grand Lodge views Masonry differently than your lodge or my lodge views Masonry. And the Grand Lodge wants a one-size-fits-all Masonry. And I'm giving some conjecture here. Grand Lodge has the mentality that what we promulgate as being acceptable, every lodge has to be able to do it. There's a big example of that is in our entered apprentice degree. Do we turn the lights? Do we alter the lights during the degree? Some lodges do, some lodges don't. The Grand Lodge says you can't alter the lights because some lodges don't have the ability to alter their lights. Therefore, we can't let you alter your lights. Chamber reflection the same way, because every lodge is not set up, and the Grand Lodge doesn't have a procedure for what a chamber reflection should do at the Grand Lodge level. Their reaction to it is to just ban it. Mm-hmm. Personally, I am not in favor of that ban. We've lost focus with what initiation is. Anciently, initiation was supposed to be mentally, emotionally, and physically taxing to the initiate. Today, we're polite, politically correct, and we apologize. And we try to get through it as quickly as possible so he can get home and watch the evening news.
Yeah.
We've lost focus. And I am not opposed to a chamber reflection, but that's going to be down the road. That's going to require some significant changes to the mindsets of the members of Grand Lodge, not just the guys who write the monitor.
Yeah. Something I've been told in the past is make sure you know what and when you're going to die on which hill.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just
no, and I was going to say something I'd like to clarify. When you say members of Grand Lodge, we're talking about past masters as well, not just people.
That's right. The voting members. Yeah. All the voting members of Grand Lodge. There's a mindset change that has to take place for a chamber reflection to be recognized as regular. Because my grandfather's generation changed our fraternity from a philosophical, dark, esoteric ritual to a civic-minded social club.
Yeah.
And that's what we've become.
I personally, and I don't know that was wrong in their time, but things have changed now. We just have the uphill battle of bringing it back to what we want.
Yeah, every generation should have input as far as what the fraternity is. The fraternity has evolved since it began,
right.
And there's nothing wrong with evolution. So it changed where it needed to, apparently, and now it might be time for it to change and go in a different direction.
Yep.
So I had a question about the promulgation of degree work, right? When you say that, like if you have a team that comes up and they do like an exemplification of a degree, right? Like let's say it's not a real degree that's not being conferred on anyone, but let's say I find a ritual from the ancient Fraternal Order of Eyes, right? Which they have a left eye degree, a right eye degree, and I can't remember what the other one is, like the third eye degree, let's say. And as an educational thing, I say, hey, we are going to exemplify this, and we are not going to confer anything, and we technically don't even have the passwords because those were not preserved in the ritual, but we just want to show people what this would look like. Would that count as promulgation of work that is not Texas standard, or would that be valid?
Where are you going to do that at?
That's a good question. Now, how much trouble do we get in if it happens at a lodge?
So you just made me open my law book. So
okay,
you did it. Now I got to.
Yeah. Oh man, he's bringing the band hammer.
You done messed up,
boys. It was nice knowing y'all.
Exactly.
I'm guessing we could phrase that within the. So I guess maybe in one context it would be an educational function in the lodge room, and then like maybe in a different context it might be an educational function in a restaurant.
So guys, I'm in Division 3, Title 2, Chapter 6, Article 224. Masonic lodge rooms and anterooms. Let me start over. Masonic lodge rooms and anterooms which open directly into lodge rooms shall not be used for any other purpose than Masonic. Masonic lodge rooms and anterooms opening directly into lodge rooms shall not be used for other than Masonic purposes. That's Article 224.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be thin ice, Gabe.
It'd be thin ice.
Yeah.
I feel like I could still swing it.
The exception there is if one of the organizations, Royal Arch Chapter, a recognized organization that's listed in Article 225 can use the room. But a lodge cannot use a room for anything other than Masonic purposes. So you would have to justify how that exemplification of the third eye degree is Masonic.
Okay. That would be interesting, and
I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying you would have to be able to justify that there's a Masonic lesson buried in there somewhere.
Ooh. Jim, you're going to send me down a rabbit hole on my personal time. I'm going to be just sitting there going, all right, now how can I get away with this? Oh.
Well, and luckily we've got a lot of other spaces we can use that aren't in the lodge room.
True.
Yes. Y'all's temple is, you're not room poor. You've got other places you can do.
So, in the realm of more practical concerns, if a lodge is really poor at ritual and they're seeking to improve the ritual, what advice do you have for them? Where do you start? Like, what do you do if you just suck at ritual?
So there's a difference. There's a difference between sucking at ritual and not knowing you suck at it, and sucking at ritual and knowing you suck at it and wanting to improve.
The known knowns and the unknown unknowns.
There you have it. If you're poor at your ritual execution and you want to improve, please contact your district instructor. Start there, and if that can't work out, contact me directly, and we'll get some resources lined up, and we'll get some instruction going on in your lodge.
That's great advice. Utilize those DIs.
Exactly. That's what they're there for.
No.
Okay, so kind of another follow-up question to that one is, what's the most common problem that you see for lodges? What most common problem do the lodges experience in their ritual conferral?
Confidence in the degree team. The guys get up there, they lack confidence, and their performance shows they lack confidence. That's a big problem. The second problem is guys who know the words, they know where to move, but they don't understand what they're teaching the guy. So not understanding the true philosophical teachings of the degree and not having confidence in your performance, the two biggest issues I see.
Yeah, I think the ruffian parts in the masters in between somebody who's getting theatrical and somebody who just is regurgitating the lines. There's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. But we also see the same thing in the fellowcraft lecture. If you got a guy standing there like a robot and a monotone voice going through that fellowcraft lecture, that guy's not hearing any of it.
No.
You got to know. You got to understand what you're saying to the guy, not just the words.
It's a good point.
And so I had an experience recently where I was delivering some work and I kind of fudged it because I got into one of those moments where the bottom of your brain just kind of drops out in the middle of ritual and you go, oh God, I don't remember what the next two sentences are. And, I was able to gloss over it. That happens to all of us. And I was able to gloss over it really easy. And somebody asked me afterwards, like, how, that was pretty smooth. Like, how do you do that? And I said, well, what works for me and not necessarily for everybody is that you have to know the subject of the ritual well enough that you can immerse yourself using the same phrasing and the same knowledge of that subject that you can just work around it. So
Absolutely.
With enough confidence and smoothness and knowledge of the subject, I mean, you can get away with murder pretty much. So,
no.
There is a point, though.
Get away. That's part of the problem.
So I think some of the questions I had written down for here, you had already answered earlier, which is, how does the lodge go about having a ritual graded? You answered that. And I think we also covered if each ritual was graded separately. So the question I had then was, is there any kind of recognition for lodges that perform the ritual especially well?
So by performing, just performing the ritual on their own, the answer is no. There are no recognitions for that. Mm-hmm. If a lodge does opt to have a degree graded by the Committee on Work, they will receive a certificate of merit presented at the Grand Lodge at the following Grand Lodge session. And you may have been to some lodges where you see those certificates hanging up on the wall. Mm-hmm. They'll have the date, what degree was conferred, and actually have the members, all the names of all the degree team members on the certificate. And so that's the recognition. And each year, the degree team that scored the highest in each of the 3 degrees receives a special recognition at Grand Lodge. So you'll have one winner for the EA, one winner for the fellowcraft, one winner for the master's degree. But everyone who sets out to have their degree graded receives a certificate of merit.
Okay.
That's cool. So we're down to the last question now, Gabe?
Yes, sir.
You guys are? So this one, I don't even know if you're allowed to answer it, Jim, but it's always something I've wondered if our ritual is actually written down somewhere. Is there a master copy in the sacred vault of Grand Lodge?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
I love that answer. That's awesome.
It's sitting on the shelf somewhere next to the Coca-Cola recipe.
I thought you were.
Here's what I will tell you. If it is written down anywhere, no one has told me yet.
Excellent. I can keep up my fantasy.
It's just like the White House and the aliens.
Yeah, there's a top secret committee. There's a top secret committee room in the basement archives of the Grand Lodge building that the Grand Master doesn't even have access to. The only key is the chairman of the Committee on Work, and he's the only one who has access to that.
That's what I'm hoping. I really thought it was going to be in the basement of the Alamo, but I'll go with Grand Lodge.
Okay. So for our listeners, I'm joking.
Yeah.
There is no master copy of our ritual written down anywhere.
Is it in Is it in that grand chapter room that always smells like old people? Oh, man.
That's great.
This has been a great discussion.
Absolutely.
So this week's fraternal quote, I hope that it's relevant to the discussion. Briefly stated, the true purpose of ancient philosophy was to discover a method whereby the development of the rational nature could be accelerated instead of awaiting the slower processes of nature. And that's by our illustrious brother Manly P. Hall in his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. So
it's actually a very good book. I'm working my way through it right now.
Oh, I'm loving it. I decided to pick it up recently, and I'm going, oh man, this is very quotable. So,
Yeah,
but,
I went down in I went down in February this year down to San Marcos Lodge, and they have a study. There's their study group, and they met as a group weekly and went through the secret teachings of all ages, and that impressed me. So I got back home sometime midsummer. I picked up a book and I started reading it, and it's an interesting read.
No doubt.
all right. So, Rhit, Billy, closing thoughts, and then I'll have closing thoughts, and then we'll let Jim ramble on for a maximum of 45 minutes.
So first off, Jim, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this is definitely something we've dreamed about. I mean, the podcast was meant to bring information to the brothers, and I think our committees are hugely important and underutilized. So hopefully this will help get the word out a little bit. But, you know, on that note, I can't implore brothers enough to go and visit one of these forums, go in and visit one of these exams, because they'll let you sit and just watch. And if you're nervous about it, go watch one, and you'll wish you would have sat and took the exam. You know, it's they're not going to chop your fingers off if you don't pass. You know, that's the worst thing they can tell you is work on this and that, and then come back in next month or whenever the next exam is. So look into that and make it happen, brothers.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So Rhit, as an A certificate holder for a number of years, I'm sure you've been through this process quite a bit. I'm about to, within the next month, sit down for my first exam. I've been to a forum, but I haven't yet sat in on an exam. So I'm nervous, but at the same time, I think it's that same jitteriness that everybody feels before they go through it. And I'm hopeful, and I think it's great that, guys like you, Jim, are so approachable and available with, advice, questions. It's amazing. And like Rich said, I think our committees are underutilized, but, I know what it's like to be a young Mason and, be reluctant to reach out to people. I can't say enough how much, if you have a question, find out who might know the answer, reach out to them. Just send them an email or a message, and you'll be surprised how often they actually answer back.
Yeah, and so what I wanted to kind of say is again, thank you for coming on and everything like that. One of the things that I've relied on a lot personally in the fraternity is grabbing anybody that knows anything about anything and just picking their brains. And so to have an opportunity to sit down with somebody who's on the committee on work is pretty invaluable to me, not only for the podcast and for the purpose of education, but also just personally, like just to be able to reach out and say, hey, like I have a question about this. The fact that y'all are available for that is very meaningful. And I like that. You even fielded dumb questions that I had about the committee on work apron and how about the ratios? Is the ratios okay? Like it's still technically a Pythagorean triangle, and I'm asking all these dumb questions about the shape of the apron, and you entertained it regardless, and you had good answers for it. So. The patience you guys must have for good questions and bad questions is just very impressive. But Jim, if you had any closing thoughts that you wanted to leave the audience with, go for it.
Thank you, guys. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity and the invitation to sit down with you tonight and visit about the committee, but more importantly about our ritual and our practice of teaching and discerning the ritual here in Texas. Freemasonry is very near and dear to my heart, and it's a way of life. Our Grandmaster coined that phrase this year, and it sounded kind of corny when he first said it, but the more I've thought about it, the more he's right. And it's a way of life for me, particularly and personally. So I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk about our fraternity with guys who understand it, and we can go back and forth and have some intelligent conversations, and I appreciate that. I would just like to ask all of our listeners, don't be intimidated by our processes. If you have any desire at all to learn anything about our ritual, come to a forum. Don't worry about the exam. Go to the Grand Lodge calendar, go to the Facebook page, get the calendar, look at it, come to a forum, show up, sit there, watch, listen, and learn. I promise you will walk out of that room that afternoon knowing something you did not know when you walked in, regardless of how many of those you sat through. You will walk out knowing something you didn't know. Then, if you feel like it and you're up to it, you want to take the challenge set for an exam, remember that it is a challenge, but you're also among brethren. And we're there to help you as much as we are to anything else. So at the end of the day, I appreciate the work that the guys in our state do regarding our ritual. And I just wish we had more folks that would take the time to learn it so that they can teach it and they can exemplify it in the manner in which it was originated. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
Thank you.
So, brethren,
Been a pleasure.
if you would like to learn more, you can visit us at www.fortworth148.org. We are at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. If you live in the 64th District of the Grand Lodge of Texas and you want to promote an event, please reach out to them at 64th.org. That's 64th.org. You can learn more about our upcoming Masonicon event, the Texas Masonicon 2018, at texasmasonicon.com. We spell that texasmasonicon.com. We are at Texas Mason Icon or Texas Masonicon on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The event is all day on Saturday, September 15th, and by the time this episode comes out, the early bird special will have concluded, so you can order tickets for $55. We're very excited about it. We have speakers flying in from all over the country and Texas. We've got visitors coming from all over Texas and the United States, and we've even got some visitors coming in from other continents. We're super psyched about it, so come hear some Masonic education, get you charged up for the rest of the year until Texas Masonicon 2019.
There you go. All right, well, let's shut this bad boy down. This is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabe Jagush signing off.
Jim Rumsey signing off.